You've been carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Something planted before you could speak, before you could choose, before you even knew what choice meant. And the strangest part, you defend it, you protect it, you call it yours. But what if I told you that the pain you're nursing, the patterns you keep repeating, the invisible walls you keep hitting, none of it started with you? What if the prison you're living in was built by someone else's unhealed wounds, and you've been decorating the cells ever since, calling it home? This isn't about blame. This is about waking up to the architecture of your own suffering and realizing you inherited the blueprint. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Your mother loved you, probably did her best, maybe sacrificed everything. And still, despite all that love, despite all that effort, she passed something down to you that she couldn't fix in herself. Not because she was cruel, but because she was human. Because unhealed wounds don't disappear with good intentions. They multiply, they morph, they find new hosts. And you, being the closest, the most vulnerable, the most open, you absorbed them. You became the continuation of her unfinished story. The question isn't whether this happened. The question is, are you aware enough to stop the cycle? Think about the last time you sabotaged something good in your life. A relationship that was going well until you picked a fight out of nowhere. A job opportunity you let slip because you convinced yourself you weren't ready. That friendship you pushed away right when it started getting real. Now ask yourself, was that really you? Or was that the voice of someone who once told themselves they weren't worthy? And somehow, through years of osmosis, you learn to speak the same language. We don't just inherit eye color and bone structure. We inherit fear. We inherit shame. We inherit the ways our parents learned to cope with a world that hurt them before they knew how to heal. And when you're a child, you don't question it, you just absorb it, like a sponge in dark water. Philosophy has been circling this truth for centuries, though it rarely puts it in such direct terms. The Greeks understood that we are shaped by forces larger than ourselves. Epicurus, often misunderstood as a simple pleasure seeker, actually spent his life teaching people how to distinguish between natural desires and the P-tube-inherited anxieties that masquerade as needs. He knew that most of our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from the false beliefs we've internalized about what we need to be happy, safe, or worthy. And where do those beliefs come from? From the people who raised us, from the wounds they carried like heirlooms, polished and passed down with care. Your mother's anxiety became your Her fear of abandonment became your inability to commit. Her need to control became your perfectionism. Her buried sadness became your chronic numbness. And the cruelest part, you've been calling all of this you. You've been building your identity around survival strategies that were never meant for the life you're actually living. You're running from ghosts that only she could see, fighting battles that ended before you were born. And if you've been resonating with this, maybe it's time to join the space where we go deeper every week. You know where the button is? Now, let's get philosophical about pleasure, because this is where it gets interesting. Hedonism, in its truest form, isn't about indulgence. It's about liberation. It's about learning to distinguish between what genuinely brings you alive and what you've been conditioned to crave as a band-aid for inherited pain. Most people are chasing pleasures that aren't even theirs. They're trying to fill voids that were carved out in someone else's childhood. They're medicating wounds that they didn't inflict. And they wonder why nothing ever feels like enough. Think about it. Why do you seek approval the way you do? Why does criticism feel like annihilation? Why does being alone feel like punishment? These aren't random quirks, these are adaptations. Your mother needed approval because her mother withheld it. Your mother feared criticism because her father wielded it like a weapon. Your mother couldn't bear solitude because she was abandoned, emotionally if not physically, and she never learned that being alone doesn't mean being unloved. And you learned all of this before you learned to tie your shoes. You learned it in the silences, in the tensions, in the way love was given conditionally or withdrawn as punishment. You learned that your worth was negotiable, and you've been negotiating ever since. But here's the twist. You're not doomed to repeat this forever. The pattern is strong, yes, ancient even, but it's not unbreakable. The first step is recognition, not in a therapeutic hand-holding way, but in a clear-eyed, almost brutal acknowledgement. I am living someone else's unlived life. I am carrying someone else's unlived pain. And that stops here. Not because you hate your mother, but because you love yourself enough to become something other than a monument to her suffering. Nietzsche talked about the eternal return, the idea that you should live as if you'll have to repeat this exact life infinitely. Most people recoil from that thought. Why? Because they're not living their lives. They're living echoes. They're living reactions. They're living in the shadow of unresolved trauma that they inherited like a genetic disorder. But what if you could strip that away? What if you could look at your life and ask, what here is actually mine? What did I choose? What would I choose again, eternally, without hesitation? That's the work. That's the real hedonism. The pursuit of a life so genuinely yours that you'd gladly live it forever. Your mother couldn't do this. Maybe she didn't have the tools, the awareness, the support. Maybe she was too buried under her own inheritance to even see the possibility. And that's tragic, truly. But her failure to heal doesn't obligate you to remain wounded. Her inability to break free doesn't chain you to the same patterns. You are not a sequel. You are not a rerun. You are the opportunity for something entirely different. Let's talk about what this looks like practically, because philosophy without application is just decoration. You want to break the cycle. Start noticing your automatic responses. When you feel that familiar surge of anxiety, that old impulse to control, to withdraw, to lash out, pause. Don't act. Don't suppress it either. Just notice, ask, is this mine? Did I choose this response, or was it chosen for me decades ago? Most of the time you'll realize it's a meet-down, a reflex inherited from someone who was trying to survive a world that no longer exists. And if this is landing deep, if you're realizing how much of your suffering is borrowed, then maybe it's time to be part of a community that sees this clearly. You know what to do. Your mother taught you what safety looks like, and it probably looks like smallness. Like not being too much, too loud, too successful, too happy. Because maybe when she was too much, she was punished. Maybe when she was too visible, she was hurt. So she learned to shrink, and she taught you, wordlessly, to do the same. And now you self-sabotage every time you're on the verge of expansion. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere deep down, expansion feels dangerous. Success feels like betrayal. Joy feels like a setup for inevitable loss. You're not broken. You're just obedient to rules that were written in invisible ink across your mother's nervous system. But pleasure, pleasure, the kind the ancient hedonists were actually talking about, requires safety. Not the false safety of smallness, but the genuine safety that comes from knowing yourself so thoroughly that you can't be shaken by someone else's projections. Epicurus built his garden not as a place of excess, but as a sanctuary where people could experience pleasure without fear, without the constant bracing for pain. He understood that most people are so defended, so armored against inherited suffering, that they can't actually feel anything real anymore. They're numb, they're going through the motions. They're chasing intensity because they've lost access to genuine satisfaction. You've probably noticed this in yourself. The way simple pleasures don't register anymore. The way you need everything to be amplified, dramatized, extreme, just to feel something. That's not because you're desensitized to the world. It's because you're still braced against your mother's pain. You're still waiting for the other shoe to drop, because in her world, it always did. So you can't relax into the present moment. You can't savor what's actually here. You're too busy scanning for threats that only existed in her past. The work, then, is not just awareness, it's reparenting. It's learning to give yourself what she couldn't give herself. Permission to be big. Permission to be soft. Permission to want things without guilt. To enjoy things without waiting for punishment. To succeed without anticipating abandonment. This isn't selfish. This is survival. This is evolution. This is the only way the pattern actually breaks. Here's what they don't tell you. Your mother is still inside you, narrating your life. When you stand in front of the mirror, it's her voice you hear first. When you make a decision, it's her fears you're navigating around. When you love someone, it's her unmet needs you're trying to satisfy. And none of this is conscious. It's woven into your baseline reality. It's the water you swim in, which means you can't think your way out. You have to feel your way out. You have to catch yourself mid-pattern and choose actively to respond differently. Not perfectly, not immediately, but consistently. One small deviation from the script at a time. And if you're starting to see the depth of this work, if you're realizing this isn't a quick fix, but a complete rewiring, then you might want to stick around for the long game. The button's right there. Imagine this. Your mother spent her whole life believing she wasn't enough. Maybe she was told this explicitly. Or maybe it was communicated in 1,000 small ways through comparison, through conditional love, through the absence of celebration when she succeeded. Either way, she internalized it. And now you spend your life proving your worth, achieving, performing, exhausting yourself in pursuit of a validation that will never come because it's not actually about you. You're trying to heal her wound with your accomplishments. You're trying to rewrite her story by succeeding where she felt she failed, and it will never work. Because her wound is hers, your success doesn't touch it. Your failure doesn't deepen it. It exists independent of anything you do, which means you're free. Terrifyingly, liberatingly free. The philosophers understood this paradox. That freedom is terrifying precisely because it means you can no longer blame anyone else for your life. You can't point to your mother's mistakes, your father's absence, your childhood's dysfunction, and say, "This is why I am the way I am." Well, you can, and it might even be true, but it doesn't help. It keeps you stuck in the role of victim to a past you can't change. The real question is, now that you see it, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep living her unlived life, or are you going to start living yours? This is where hedonism becomes radical. Because choosing your own pleasure, your own path, your own version of a good life win, it contradicts everything you were taught about who you should be's, an act of rebellion. It's a refusal to be a monument to someone else's pain. It's saying, I see where I came from, I understand what was given to me, and I choose something different, not out of hatred, but out of love. Love for the life you actually want to live. Your mother couldn't heal certain things. Maybe she was too young, too overwhelmed, too unsupported. Maybe the pain was too deep, too old, too tangled. And you were there, small and open and absorbing, and you took it in. You took in her anxiety and made it your constant state. You took in her shame and made it your identity. You took in her limitations and made them your boundaries. And for years, maybe decades, you've been living inside this inheritance, thinking it's just the way you are, but it's not. It's the way she was. And you have the power to be different. The path forward isn't about fixing your mother. It's not about confronting her or making her see what she did. She probably can't. She's probably still inside her own inherited patterns, blind to the ways they shaped you. The path forward is about you becoming so clear, so grounded in your actual desires and values, that the old patterns simply stop running the show. They might still arise. Soul code doesn't delete easily, but they no longer dictate your choices. You see them for what they are, artifacts of someone else's survival strategy, not truths about who you have to be. And if this is resonating on a level you didn't expect, if you're feeling seen in a way that's uncomfortable but necessary, maybe it's time to be part of something that goes this deep regularly. You know where to click. Here's the final piece. You don't become what your mother couldn't heal by accident. You become it because it's what you know. It's familiar, it's home. And even if it hurts, even if it limits you, there's a strange comfort in the predictability of inherited pain. It's painful, yes, but at least you know the shape of it. At least you know how to navigate it. Choosing something different means stepping into the unknown. It means feeling incompetent at being yourself. It means stumbling through a new way of being without a map, without a model, without anyone to tell you if you're doing it right. And that's terrifying, which is why most people don't do it. They stay in the familiar suffering, decorating it, justifying it, calling it personality. But you're here, reading this, which means some part of you knows there's another way. Some part of you is tired of carrying weight that was never yours. Some part of you wants to put it down and see who you are without it. And that part of you, that's the part worth listening to. That's the part that's actually you. Underneath all the inheritance, that's the voice that got buried under years of adaptation and survival and people-pleasing and self-betrayal. And it's asking, what would my life look like if I only kept what's actually mine? The answer won't come all at once. This isn't a lightning bolt revelation that changes everything overnight. It's a slow disentanglement, a gentle, persistent questioning of every belief, every pattern, every automatic response. It's waking up each day and asking, is this mine? And if it's not, If it's something you inherited, something you were taught, something you absorbed without consent, then you let it go. Not violently, not with drama, just with a quiet, firm release. Like setting down a heavy bag you've been carrying for someone else. Your mother did the best she could with what she had, and what she had was probably her own set of inherited wounds passed down from her mother, who got them from her mother, stretching back generations. An unbroken chain of unhealed pain, each generation carrying it forward, hoping the next one might somehow fix it, but you can't fix it for them. You can only stop passing it forward. You can only say, this ends with me. Not because I'm stronger or better, but because I finally see it for what it is. And that's the work. Not dramatic, not particularly glamorous, just honest, just real, just you, finally choosing to live a life that's yours. Built on desires that are yours, moving toward pleasures that genuinely satisfy you rather than temporarily numbing you. That's hedonism in its truest form. Not excess, not escape. But the deliberate, conscious pursuit of a life so aligned with who you actually are that suffering becomes the exception rather than the baseline. You become what your mother could not heal within herself, unless you choose differently, unless you see the pattern clearly enough to step out of it, unless you love yourself enough to refuse the inheritance of pain and build something new, something that's entirely, unapologetically, undeniably yours. That's freedom. That's the real pleasure. That's the life worth living, eternally. And here's what nobody tells you about that freedom. It will make you unrecognizable to the people who knew you before. Your mother especially might not understand the person you're becoming, because you're no longer playing the role she unconsciously assigned you. You're no longer the repository for her unspoken regrets, the living proof that her sacrifices meant something, the mirror that reflects back her own unlived potential. You're becoming separate, distinct. And that separation, as necessary as it is, will feel like betrayal to the parts of her that needed you to stay the same. This is the cost nobody warns you about. When you start healing what she couldn't heal, when you start choosing what she couldn't choose, you create distance. Not necessarily physical distance, though sometimes that too, but emotional distance. The kind that comes from operating on a completely different frequency. You're no longer vibrating at the pitch of her pain. You're no longer harmonizing with her fears. And suddenly, the relationship that once felt so close, so enmeshed, starts to feel strained, uncomfortable, like you're speaking different languages, and you might feel guilty about this. You might feel like you're abandoning her, hurting her, being ungrateful for everything she gave you. But here's the truth. Her discomfort with your healing is not your responsibility. Her inability to celebrate your freedom is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually confirmation that you're doing something right. Because if your growth triggers her, it means you're finally stepping outside the pattern she could navigate. You're finally becoming something she doesn't know how to control, predict, or project onto. And that's exactly where you need to be. The ancient Stoics had a concept for this, amor fati, the love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active embrace of what is, including the difficult parts. Including the reality that growth means outgrowing. That healing means leaving behind people and patterns that can't evolve with you. It's not cruel. It's not selfish. It's honest. And honesty, real honesty, is one of the most radical acts you can commit in a world built on inherited lies and unspoken agreements to never look too closely at the pain we're all carrying. Your mother probably never learned that she could question the beliefs that were handed to her. She probably never learned that she had permission to want something different than what her mother wanted for her. She probably spent her whole life trying to be good enough, safe enough, small enough to avoid the punishments that shaped her own childhood. And then you came along, and without meaning to, she taught you the same shrinking, the same self-abandonment, the same prioritization of everyone else's comfort over your own truth. Not because she was malicious, but because it's all she knew. It's all she had to give. But you know something she didn't. You know that the pain stops when someone finally has the courage to look at it directly, name it clearly, and refuse to pass it forward. You know that love doesn't require suffering, that closeness doesn't require enmeshment, that being a good person doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of other people's expectations. You know this not because you're better, but because you came later, because you have access to language, to frameworks, to conversations about trauma and healing that didn't exist in her time. You're standing on her shoulders, even as you're stepping away from her shadow. And if you're feeling the weight of this responsibility, if you're realizing that breaking the cycle is harder than you thought, but more necessary than you imagined, then stay close to spaces that understand this work. You know what I mean? Let's talk about what your mother feared most, because it's probably what you fear most too. Abandonment, rejection, being too much or not enough, being seen fully and found lacking. These fears don't come from nowhere. They come from actual experiences, actual wounds, actual moments when love was withdrawn or when vulnerability was met with punishment. Your mother learned these fears the hard way, and then she taught them to you the only way she knew how, by living them out in front of you every single day. When she warned you not to get too excited, not to hope too much, not to expect too much from people, she wasn't being pessimistic. She was trying to protect you from the disappointments that broke her. When she told you to play it safe, to choose security over passion, to settle for good enough, she wasn't trying to limit you. She was trying to spare you the pain of reaching for something beautiful and having it shatter in your hands. Every limitation she placed on you was once a protection she placed on herself. And it worked, in its way. It kept her safe, but it also kept her small. And now you're here, trying to figure out how to honor her love while refusing her limitations. This is the paradox at the heart of inherited trauma. The very things that helped her survive are the things that will kill your spirit if you let them. Her hypervigilance, her people-pleasing, her inability to rest, her constant bracing for disaster, these were adaptive once. They helped her navigate a world that was genuinely dangerous, genuinely unpredictable, genuinely hostile to her well-being. But you're not living in that world. You're living in yours. And in your world, those same strategies are maladaptive. They're creating problems where none exist. They're building walls around opportunities. They're turning potential allies into suspected threats. So, the question becomes, how do you honor where she came from while refusing to live there yourself? How do you hold compassion for her pain while declining the invitation to make it your own? This is the tightrope walk of conscious healing. You can't do it with resentment, because resentment keeps you tied to her. You can't do it with guilt, because guilt keeps you small. You have to do it with a kind of fierce, tender clarity that says, I see you, I understand you, and I'm choosing something different, not against you, just for me. Epicurus would say that true pleasure comes from the absence of pain, not from the pursuit of intensity. And the deepest pain, the kind that underlies all other pain, is the pain of self-abandonment, of living a life that isn't yours, of performing a version of yourself that you think will keep you safe, keep you loved, keep you from being abandoned the way your mother once was. But that performance is exhausting, and no matter how good you get at it, it never quite works, because you can't perform your way into genuine connection. You can't people-please your way into authentic love. You can't shrink yourself small enough to avoid all criticism, all rejection, all loss. What you can do is stop trying. You can stop performing and start being. You can stop managing everyone else's emotions and start feeling your own. You can stop living in reaction to your mother's wounds and start living in response to your actual life. And yes, this will be uncomfortable. Yes, people will be confused. Yes, you'll lose relationships that were only held together by your willingness to abandon yourself. But what you'll gain is something your mother never had. A life that's genuinely, undeniably, unapologetically yours. Think about the last time you felt truly at ease. Not distracted, not numbed out, not performing relaxation, but actually at ease. For most people, it's been so long they can't even remember. Because ease requires safety, and safety requires knowing that you're not going to be punished for being yourself. And if you learned early that being yourself was dangerous too much, too loud, too needy, too sensitive, then you never developed the capacity for genuine ease. You developed the capacity for hypervigilance disguised as productivity, for anxiety disguised as conscientiousness, for self-abandonment disguised as flexibility. Your mother lived this way, and she taught you to live this way, and now you're so good at it that you don't even notice you're doing it. You don't notice how often you check other people's faces for signs of approval or disapproval. You don't notice how quickly you adjust your behavior based on subtle cues about what's acceptable. You don't notice how rarely you actually say what you mean, want what you want, or rest without guilt. It's all automatic, all invisible, all exhausting. But here's what changes everything. You can notice. Right now, in this moment, you can start paying attention to the ways you're still living according to rules that were written for someone else's life. You can catch yourself mid-performance and ask, who am I doing this for? You can feel the familiar anxiety rising and ask, is this danger real, or is this an old alarm system responding to a threat that no longer exists? You can notice the impulse to make yourself smaller, quieter, less, and ask, what would happen if I didn't? And if this is starting to feel like the most important work you've ever done, like the thing underneath everything else you've been struggling with, then maybe it's time to go deeper consistently. The community's waiting. Most people spend their entire lives trying to earn the love they should have received unconditionally as children. They achieve, they perform, they perfect, they exhaust themselves, and it's never enough, because they're trying to fill a void that can't be filled from the outside. They're trying to prove their worth to an internal judge that sounds suspiciously like a parent who couldn't see them clearly. And your mother, bless her, probably couldn't see you clearly. Not because she didn't love you, but because she was seeing you through the lens of her own wounds.